the end game is for the Russians, but do we know what the end games of prolonging the war is for the Americans? Ladies and gentlemen, let's debate.
From the Delhi studios of Republic TV, it's time for Arnab Goswami on The Debate.
Arnab Goswami on The Debate at 9. Presented by Amity University. Powered by RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. Century Ply. Ever Ready. And Fujitsu General.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. Great to see you on top of the week. I'm asking tonight, what is the purpose of the war? What is the purpose of extending the war, more specifically? For both sides, what is the purpose? I'm not clear about what the end game for either side really is. For the Russians, the end game possibly is taking over the Donbass regions, a regime change in Kiev which ensures Ukraine or whatever remains of it doesn't walk into the NATO camp. That could be an end game. We can at least guess. But think about it. What is the end game for the Americans? What is the end game? That is what remains completely unclear. None of us will know what the Americans will gain by extending the war. None of us can exactly pinpoint what the Americans will gain by making the war protracted, almost interminable. Interminable, ladies and gentlemen. But ask yourself, are the Americans prolonging the war? Yes, they are. On a daily basis, they do everything possible to make sure that the war extends, goes into another week, another week, another week. So the Americans want to extend the war. But we're not clear, or at least we're not talking about what they're hoping to get by prolonging the war. And in one of my earlier shows, I had shared with you my hunch that the Americans actually want to make lots of money. So that could be one incentive. The way their defense companies are increasing in valuation on the Wall Street and possible sales, we know that the finances for America's military industrial complex, the financial gains are going to be massive. So money is one big incentive for the Americans. But tonight my debate is on something else. The possibility that the Americans want a regime change in Moscow. The end reason they are doing the war is maybe they want Putin out. But is that a legitimate aim? You may not like Putin. You may hate Putin. You may hate him for whatever reasons. But at the end of the day, is it legitimate, moral, legal to make a regime change into a war strategy? And Biden can't deny that he has wanted a regime change. It's something that Joe Biden has said in as many words, multiple occasions, that he wants a regime change. He says Putin has no right to remain in power, that he's really gunning for a regime change in Moscow. And my question is this tonight. How is this a regime change, a legitimate end game for Americans? Americans, ask your president. If removing Zelensky by extending the war is not correct, then how is making a situation where removing Putin by extending the war a correct proposition? There's got to be some sense of balance. The world wants to know, ladies and gentlemen, where this is headed. What is the end game of this war? We know what it is for the Russian side. For the other side, we don't know, ladies and gentlemen. And that's what worries me. Is Biden trying to provoke Putin into making this war a bigger, longer, more prolonged one? We need to ask these questions of the Americans and everyone on their side tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, and debate number 2 this evening. On debate number 2, we have a situation where Pakistan is in an absolute frightening mess. Matter of time before it really explodes. We're watching it on the ground very closely. Imran Khan going out. And debate number 3 this evening. We've seen some scenes in the Bengal Assembly which make us feel that the situation is going from bad to worse out there. Chaos, commotion and ruckus. That's the story from Bengal. And here are the headlines this Monday evening on the debate tonight.
God's sake, This man cannot remain in power.
Biden's comment saying Putin has to go, that there has to be a regime change, has triggered a global debate. Is that what he really wants?
Mr. President, were you calling for regime change?
No.
And White House is forced to go into damage control mode. Biden now says, I didn't mean it. China also jumps straight in. Zelensky says Ukraine is ready to be neutral, but Putin say no meeting now, no point meeting now.
It has no confidence in the Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan Niazi, and consequently he shared ceased to hold office under Clause 4 abed.
No confidence motion moved against Imran in Pakistan. Countdown to exit has begun.
तरीके में बात कामयाब होगी। कितना यकीन है?
Pakistan opposition says Shehbaz Sharif is their candidate. If Imran loses, will he be the next Prime Minister of Pakistan?
They also started seriously hooliganism and injured our MLAs also.
And watch these unprecedented scenes in the Bengal Assembly. We're going to show you the pictures tonight. The members of Legislative Assembly come to blows. BJP MLAs are suspended. And ladies and gentlemen, over the weekend, Joe Biden was in Eastern Europe and he decided to provoke Putin. He went on the aggressive when the world was hoping for talks and dialogue. America is clearly looking to keep the war alive and Russia is showing no signs of stopping. Who then is responsible for the escalation? And what is Putin's endgame? What is Biden's real intention? Let's debate.
For free people refuse to live in a world of hopelessness and darkness. We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principle, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
What he's done to these people, what does it make you think? He's a butcher.
From saying Putin cannot remain in power to calling him a butcher, US President Joe Biden was aggressive during his visit to Poland. He lashed out at Putin at a time when the world was hoping for reconciliation or some talks. Many here in Ukraine have also asked this question: what is it that the US is really offering Ukraine, or is it that the US is only egging Ukrainians into this war?
This community of democracy is blatantly autocratic regarding other members of the world community. Perhaps the world dictatorship would be even more appropriate.
The fact of the matter is that the 6th round of talks are on. The situation is on tenterhooks, and Biden's comment may have just caused an escalation in the war at a time when the violence sees no end.
Entering a protracted phase of this entire war. We are now reporting from a place called Brody. Now, Brody is just crossing a little the Lviv Oblast towards Kiev. This is a village area, but let me tell you why this is going to be very important. Because what we have seen in the last 48 hours is that considered safe havens in western Ukraine have now been attacked by Russia. In fact, they wanted to send across a message that not very far from where President Joe Biden was there, they carried out an attack, and now these are places that have constantly been attacked over the last few days, and there appears to be a change in tactics.
America's allies are distancing themselves from Biden's comments, saying they wouldn't use those terms.
Je pense qu'il faut d'abord être factuel et ensuite, en effet, tout faire pour ne pas que la situation dérape. Je n'utiliserai pas ce genre de propos parce que je continue de discuter avec le président Poutine. Parce que que voulons-nous faire collectivement? Nous voulons arrêter la guerre que la Russie a lancée en Ukraine sans faire la guerre et sans escalade.
And even America has been forced into damage control mode.
I think the President, the White House, made the point last night that, quite simply, President Putin cannot be empowered to wage war or engage in aggression against Ukraine or anyone else. As you know, and as you've heard us say repeatedly, we do not have a strategy of regime change in Russia or anywhere else for that matter. In this case, as in any case, it's up to the people of the country in question. It's up to the Russian people.
Him placing such an aggressive stance with Russia and against Vladimir Putin is putting the Donbass and the republics in greater risk. Now, was it done intentional to do this? Only he knows. Okay, we're not far from Ukrainian positions and where the active fighting is going on. We're talking to the people here. We're seeing the bombshells. We're seeing the people buried in the streets.
The off-script comment by Biden has made the American intent clear. They want a long war.
But we emerged anew in the great battle for freedom, a battle between democracy and autocracy, between liberty and repression, between a rules-based order and one governed by brute force. In this battle, we need to be clear-eyed. This battle will not be won in days or months either. We need to steel ourselves for the long fight ahead.
A battle that suits Biden at a time when his approval ratings are falling and inflation fears in the US are hitting a high. The warmongering, the provocation, and the instigation must end. Let's debate.
My guests from Moscow, John Mark Dugan, Nikolai Topurin, political analyst from Moscow, Nikita Menkovich of the Eurasian Analytical Club, Marina Kolesnikova, she's joining us from Bishkek in Kazakhstan. On the other side tonight, we have Charles Kopchin, senior fellow at the Council of Foreign Relations, and he's a professor at Georgetown. Gabriel Noronha is a former special advisor for Iran at the U.S. State Department under Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He's a former special advisor for Iran. And Jeffrey Van Gordon is a former leader of the Conservatives in the European Parliament. And he's joining us from London. And my first question is to Ambassador Syed Hussein Mousavian, who's a nuclear policy specialist at Princeton University. And he's a Middle East and nuclear policy specialist there. And he's a former chief of Iran's National Security Foreign Relations Committee. So very experienced man to start with. He's joining us from New Jersey. Ambassador Mousavian, it appears to me and a lot of our viewers that, of course, while the Russians have not given us a deadline on when they'll finish the war, and we are still guessing what their end game is, the other person who does not want the war to end, who wants the war to be prolonged, who wants the war to be protracted, who wants anything but an end to the war, is Joe Biden. And his statements and his utterances are making it absolutely clear, the writing on the wall is, Biden wants a very long war, a very protracted one. Why does he want a long and protracted war? What is his end game here?
I believe this is clear to everyone. The main international rivalries for the US, they are China and Russia. That's why the NATO and the US definitely would welcome regime change in both countries, Moscow and Beijing, in order to weaken the both competitors. In the region, Iran is a country who is confronting the US. That's why the US would welcome regime change in Iran. In Latin America, Venezuela, they would welcome regime change in Venezuela. It is clear because they want to expand their influence and power. And any country in the way of the US as the only superpower would face such a consequence. That's why I believe official US policy is no regime change. But in reality and in practical terms, they would be very happy for regime change in Russia.
Okay, so Mr. Jeffrey Van Gordon, would it therefore, was it a slip of the tongue when Joe Biden said that I want a regime change, the man must go? Because the Americans never actually admit that they want a regime change. They carry out the regime change, but then say the people of the country organized it. The CIA provides outside support. The intelligence agencies get involved. Whenever the regime change happens, it has been that way. But in this case, Biden is being quite open. He says, I want a regime change in Moscow. And he's repeatedly saying it. And then he's also saying, I want the war to go on and on and on and on and on. We have to prepare ourselves. This will not be finished in days or months or weeks. It has to go on for a long time. Why is he wanting a long war? It's the opposite of what he actually should be saying, isn't it?
Well, Arnab, thank you for inviting me on your program. I mean, I totally reject the two premises on which you're making this argument at the moment. We're not seeking regime change. I would say this is a slip of the tongue, or you shouldn't talk in a way which is open to misinterpretation. Obviously, we'd all like governments around the world to be peaceful governments, not ones that wage brutal aggression on their neighbors. And that's exactly what we've seen here with Russia invading the Ukraine. By the way, I'm putting, of course, 11,000 Indian students who happen to be there at great risk at the moment. But, I mean, America has no interest in prolonging a war. This isn't a war between America and Russia. This is a war brought about by Putin invading the Ukraine. It's a war between Russia and the Ukraine. Of course we want that war brought to a rapid end. We want a ceasefire. We want the Russian troops withdrawn. We want the Ukrainian people to be able to make their own choices in freedom. That's what we want. No one has an interest in prolonging this war, and President Putin certainly doesn't. I mean, I'm not a spokesman, obviously. President Biden certainly doesn't. I'm not a spokesman for Biden. But of course, the Americans don't want a prolongation of the war. I mean, it could lead in a very dangerous direction and get totally out of hand. That's something we all want to avoid. So it's up to Russia now to stop this brutal aggression, where basically it's creating devastation right across the Ukraine. Cities are being destroyed. Women and children are being put to flight. Thousands are being killed. We want an end to this.
I wish I could agree with you. I want to agree with you.
Well,
Mr. Van Orden, I want to believe that you're right. I want to believe that's what the truth is. But then I go back and I see the American president's statements. And it's exactly the opposite of what you are articulating in such a clear manner. The American president is going on and saying this battle will not be won in days or months either. He's not talking of ending the war. He's talking of winning the war.
He's saying,
as a person, my question to you, and let's put our mind to it. No, if you allow me, just allow me to complete. I hand it over to you after that. My point is, he is officially not a participant in the war. Someone who is not a participant in the war, watching it from the outside, can only say, I hope the war is brought to an end. But he's not talking about that. He's saying he wants to win the war. My question is, how can he win a war that he's officially not a part of? Isn't that an admission, Charles, that this is a proxy war by the Americans?
May I respond to that?
Let me just back up a second. I want to pick up on the comments that our friend in London just made. You said at the beginning of the show that the United States is seeking to prolong the war. So what are you suggesting, that the Ukrainians should simply lie down and raise the white flag and let the Russians take over the country? It's not the United States that's prolonging the war. It's the fighting spirit of the Ukrainians. This is not a war that the United States has launched. It's a war that Russia has launched. Russia has launched a war of aggression. If you want the Ukrainians to surrender, then just come out and say so. But don't blame the United States for trying to help a sovereign country defend
Charles,
itself.
I think you got me.
And
Charles, you got me. Charles, you got me completely wrong as usual, and I need to respond to you.
Why is India aligning itself with the
Why are you obsessed with India? Why are you obsessed with India? India is not a participant in the war. India didn't start the war. It's your war. It's your war. You answer my question if I can ask you
why.
My question is this.
Why can't India put itself on the right side of history and oppose a Russian war of aggression against its neighbor? If you want Ukraine to surrender, then just come out and say so. Don't blame the United States for a war that the Russians have launched.
Okay. Now, if I can respond, and my Russian friends are laughing away at this, and Jeffrey Van Orden and Charles Kupchan, I enjoy this kind of a debate, but I need to let you know that the subject of the debate is not America, and I am not the person who's battling you. Those from Moscow will respond to you, but I will only say this to you. Charles, you are embarrassed like hell. You're embarrassed like hell because your president, Joe Biden, went off script once again in Poland. You are embarrassed as hell because your president went off script and he spoke about a regime change in Russia. Why don't you tell your president, why don't you give him a proper script the next time?
Who's prolonging the war? And the answer is Russia. Why do you keep changing the subject? U.S. policy is not regime change.
I'm not changing the subject. The larger question is, I'm going to Marina. Okay, so she's going to respond to you. But I will say this to you, Charles. I'll tell you one thing, Charles. Marina will respond to you, Nikolai will respond to you, Nikita will respond to you. But I'll tell you this, the larger question is, has America been using Ukraine? Has America been using, and I repeat, underline in bold, using Ukraine for a plausible regime change in Russia all along? Otherwise, you must tell me, Charles, did the CIA not oversee a secret U.S. training program for the Ukraine Special Forces in January this year? In January this year, did the CIA, allow me to complete, please, much before the war, did the CIA, Charles, you don't want to listen to things that you're not comfortable with. I'm asking you tonight that my information is the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency overseed a secret American training program for elite Ukrainian special forces and other intelligence personnel in January this year. Were you setting the base for a regime change in Russia? Then answer me, Charles. Don't dodge the question, Charles.
Right.
Answer. Marina is taking it over from there. Marina.
Yes.
Yeah, Marina.
Yes, sir. I greatly admire the skills
go on. You
with which...
Jump straight in.
Yes. I cannot but admire the skills with which our London and Washington learned colleagues are not just economical with the truth, but they are twisting and turning the truth and actually dictating they are representative of an independent country. Why aren't you on the right side of the story? So the right side of the story, presumably, is the American side of the story, correct?
Yeah,
and when your president stated clearly that we are insisting on democracy against autocracy, so democracy implies the autocracy of the USA in the world, the worldwide autocracy of the US, and it's senile president who embarrassed himself, who embarrassed his advisors and assistants. And even in July last year, it was clearly stated that sometimes he derives from the script given to him, and basically he allows himself to state racist remarks. Quite recently, he stated that those Latinos in the U.S. are resisting vaccinations because they are afraid that once they are vaccinated and recorded, they will be all deported from the U.S. Somehow having forgotten that the 60 millions of Latinos are legal
U.S. citizens, and the numerous errors when he called basically Kamala Harris his vice president. He called her the president of the United States, and those errors or slips of the tongue when he called President Putin the legitimate President Putin, who is supported by now over 80% of his people. He called him war criminal. He called him a butcher. He called him all sorts of names. And luckily, President Putin.
So what he's saying. But Jeffrey, what she's saying. What Marina, just hold on a minute. Since you said you don't know what's going on, what she's basically saying, she's objecting to the kind of language that has been used there repeatedly by Biden. I mean, he says he's a butcher, he must get out of power, for God's sake, the man must go, the battle must carry on for a long time. That's what she's objecting to.
Well, no, but look, forget the sort of language thing. Obviously, we need to give Putin a way out, right? His forces are not doing well in the Ukraine. The Russian people are totally ignorant of what's really going on there, but Putin needs a way out where he doesn't lose face. So, yes, I agree. It's not helpful calling Putin a butcher, and it's not helpful saying we're going to put him before an international court or any of those sorts of things. None of that's helpful. I agree with that. Okay. But to try in any way imply that the United States or even President Biden is responsible for prolonging this awful conflict is complete nonsense. All we are doing is providing support to the people of the Ukraine who are stoutly defending their own democracy and their own society. They want freedom. They don't want Moscow rule.
No. See the. Okay, I'll get John into the debate. I'll get Nikita into the debate. I'll get Nicola into the debate. Marina, just wait. Can I get Nikita into the debate? Nikita, you heard this. They're basically saying what the Americans are saying. We want to help the Russians by giving Putin a face saver. And yes, he agrees. He says. Jeffrey Van Orden says, I agree. We're not helping ourselves by calling him a butcher when we should actually be giving him an escape route. Is Putin looking for the escape route, as Mr. Van Orden claims from London? Nikita.
Of course, Russia have no need to look for an escape route because Russia is winning. The reason of the war is that it was provoked by United States. What? It was provoked by NATO. The reason is that Ukraine tried and prepared aggression against republics of Donbass and Crimea. They even released the special medals for those military men for capturing Crimea. It was this aggression should take place in March, but Russia started the liberation of the Ukraine first to prevent this aggression. Why this war? Please stop laughing. You're not at the comedy club. You're not at the comedy club, sir. Please,
Mr. Van Orden, why are you laughing at this? 1 second, please. Mr. Van Orden, 1 second. Mr. Van Orden and Charles Kopchin seem quite...
I've never heard such nonsense.
Which precise part of what he said would you describe as nonsense?
Yeah, give the people
which
of the
precise
Eastern
part
Ukraine
of what Nikita Menkovich said is nonsense?
That's what they want.
I'd like to finish the information about actual situation at the field. Please stop interrupting me. It would be very good for you. Why the war was prepared by Ukraine? Because Ukraine was backed by NATO. Because it was backed by United States. By real butchers in Washington who occupied Yugoslavia, who attacked Iraq, Libya, tens of other countries. It is United States, aggressive country, aggressive regime. What for? Because United States want to change president, to change government.
But Nikita, my question is, Nikita, listen to me. Let me dig into this a little bit more. And Mr. Van Orden, our Russian guests are getting very irritated by your constantly laughing and smiling on the program. So you know, I request you, you know, that's you're amused, but you know, it's a serious debate. The question is, my question is to the Russians right now, and you say you're disgusted by what you're hearing. Okay. Are you disgusted by Biden looking to instigate Putin? Are you disgusted by Biden hoping to derail the talks? What was the intent of Biden's speech if not to provoke Putin and goad Russia into escalating? When right after, allow me to complete, right after the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov hit back and the Russian foreign minister accused America of being an autocracy. So I would say that it's wrong. It's absolutely fundamentally wrong, Mr. Van Orden, and you're a very experienced man. You're a very, very experienced man. You've been a former British Army commander. You've attended the Indian Defense Staff's Services Staff College. I know your background. You're a very experienced man. The one thing you should be saying is that please don't escalate this by provoking Russia. But you're not saying this now, Mr. Van Orden.
No, I'm asking Russia to
You should be right out there saying don't escalate this war.
No. Russia, stop this war and withdraw your forces.
There's a huge difference between rhetoric and actual violence. Okay. Russia has conducted actual violence. I'm going to get
John Mark Dugan responding to you from Moscow, please. John.
No equivalence.
Yeah. No, what's it? Gabriel. Gabriel is coming in. Gabriel and John, yeah. Sorry. Gabriel. Go first.
Yeah. So
we're not talking about.
Okay, John is on. John and Gabriel. John first.
Putin has caused time and again throughout this conflict. Words are one thing. Putin doesn't care about words all that much. Putin cares about fake excuses, fake reasons, and fake news that he can use to as justifications for his invasions. There's no equivalence between the bombing of the Mariupol theater, which killed 300 women and children and innocent civilians. That is cause for concern. That should be the main topic of this program, not a slip of the tongue.
This is lies, dude.
Revealing his preferences. Preferences is not policy. There's a huge difference. There's no official document saying the United States supports regime change. Yes, Biden should have chosen his words more carefully, but it's not worth devoting an entire hour of a segment on TV dissecting his words when we should be spending hours and hours talking about the war crimes Putin and his men have committed in Ukraine.
Can I go?
And Gabriel, I'll get John to respond to you. John.
Yeah. So look, I agree. Biden is a doddering old fool with dementia who has diarrhea of the mouth. He doesn't know what he's saying when he's not reading the teleprompter. But that being said, okay, he's sitting there calling Putin a butcher when just a couple of months ago, for absolutely no reason whatsoever, he bombed a family, including 7 children, who were unloading water. Now, I don't know. I know what you guys have heard, okay, about Ukraine, but you guys are sitting there comfortably in Washington, D.C., in London. I have actually been there. I was here just last week. I just got back. I have spoken to a lot of the Ukrainian people, okay? And look, I've got friends in Ukraine, and what's going on, I'm going to tell you right now, the Ukrainian military, they are taking up positions in these schools, in these hospitals. The Russian forces come rolling in. They don't know what these buildings are. All they know that there's missiles coming from them. And of course, they're going to call in airstrikes, okay? What are you going to do? And these Ukrainians, they are not letting the people leave. They are shooting them. No, it's absolutely true. And look, why is Biden prolonging this war? Why is America prolonging this war? I'm going to tell you right now. 2 reasons. Number one, if the American public figures out what the Biden family and all these other politicians have been doing in Ukraine to loot that place, to launder money through it, that's the first thing. They don't want that to get out. And the second thing is they are making money off the sale of these weapons paid for by the American taxpayer. They are making huge cash. And I guarantee you, if you go into their stock portfolios,
John, can I come in for a minute? John, can I come in for a minute, please? John, allow me for a minute. John, allow me for a minute. This is Arnab here from Delhi. I don't know if you can hear me, or John. I just want to come in for a minute because the issue is that of regime change. And our panelists, Jeffrey Van Orden and Charles Kupchan, all very angry, and Gabriel very angry that we are pointing the finger at the Americans. But I also need to ask you a couple of questions. Are you in a position to be irked and irritated by regime change? Because aren't you doing exactly that in Ukraine? Why was a 25-member Russian Special Forces team right? Is it a simple statement about how Putin should not be in power, or the fact that today a military group of 25 people led by Russian special forces allegedly was sent to eliminate Zelensky, who were captured near the Slovakia-Hungary border? This has been reported. Are teams being sent to eliminate Zelensky? Is that also false? Is that fake news?
By the Ukrainians.
Is that fake news? Is that fake news?
I don't believe anything that's coming out of...
Are you saying everything reported by the Ukrainians is fake news?
You know what? I think they have a good PR team.
How can you say you can't believe anything that's coming out from Ukraine?
I don't trust anything that's coming out of the West.
Okay, so 1 minute. Everything is a spin. So if everything is a spin, then my next question to you is, did you give a green light for your troops to break into the office of the Ukrainian presidential representative office of Crimea, located in Kherson, and they were told to remove the Ukrainian flag? Was that fake news?
Wait, are you talking to me?
Yeah, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you about things that the Russian forces are believed to have done, including kidnap and murder Ukrainian mayors.
Well, look, I think everybody's murdering everybody over there.
Zelensky on 3 occasions?
No, you know what?
No, you're
I think
not
if they
answering my
want to
question. I'm
eliminate
saying that
Zelensky,
if you're really irritated, no, allow me to complete, John, my point is that if you're really irritated by a statement of a president who you describe as doddering and suffering from dementia and verbal diarrhea, then also are you irritated by the bombing and destruction and human loss of life in Mariupol?
Well, look, it's a complicated subject in Mariupol because the Ukrainians are taking up defensive positions in these housing buildings. I've got emails and texts from friends that are living there sending me pictures of where the Ukrainian forces are taking up positions. And they are using these civilians as shields. And, you know, you can't expect the Russians, when they go in, not to shoot back. You can't expect that.
See, Charles, my concern is, Charles, I'm still focused on the debate about a regime change.
The reason that Ukrainians are shooting from apartment buildings is because Russia has invaded the country and is shooting at the Ukrainian military. It is taking and kidnapping Ukrainian civilians. People are defending their homes. I would ask you, if Russia came and invaded your country and started to shoot at your house, I'm guessing you would shoot back. That's what's going on. This is not a complicated war. I don't understand why we're spending so much time worrying about what Biden said when what we have here is going back to 2014. Russia didn't like the fact that a democratic government came into power in Ukraine. They therefore went into Crimea and they fostered a separatist uprising in Donbass. Now they're trying to take over the whole country. That's the beginning and the end of the story. This is not complicated. Russia has launched a vicious war of aggression. Full stop.
So if we're talking about Donbass,
I don't understand. We know when the Americans. Well, one minute, Charles. I must get back to you on this, Charles. Whenever the Americans say somebody is a democratic leader, I take it with a barrel of salt because you describe General Zia-ul Haq and General Musharraf in Pakistan as also democratic leaders who had your full and unconditional support. You're not answering the question you ought to be answering, Charles, and you get very irritated by it every time I ask you, is that are you using Ukraine for a geopolitical victory? You are. You want this war prolonged because you need to score that geopolitical victory because Biden is surrounded domestically. He's going to lose all the elections. And he knows that the only way to keep the popularity base up in American politics is a war. Bush's popularity increased during the Gulf War. George Bush's job approval rating surged up 90% with the end of the Persian Gulf War. It's a fact. Wars make you popular in America. That's why Clinton rejoiced. That's why Clinton. That's why I'll allow Charles. That's why Clinton rejoiced. He was laughing. He was laughing and rejoicing when Gaddafi died. It's a fact. So I'll get Nikolai on the debate right now. I want the war to end, but what is the Russian endgame?
Russia launched the war. The United States is trying to stop it. Is trying.
Then why don't you help end it rather than help prolong it?
The U.S. is
trying to help end it by providing
Nikolai's been on the debate from Moscow. Nikolai Toporin, please.
Defend themselves.
Yes, Arnab. Let me speak for a while, because it's very difficult to speak if everybody speaks at the same time. Please try don't to interrupt each other, otherwise we can't listen to what they are saying. In my view, we should return to 2014, when there was a coup d'etat in Ukraine. And the story began from this fact. After all, after this fact, Ukraine started to be in hard opposition to Russia in everything, in not only in Donbass and in Crimea. It's pronounced the way to join NATO. Many times, Russian president told colleagues from Western countries and from Ukraine as well that Russia don't want Ukraine to be accepted to NATO, because it can be a real military threat to Russia, to Russian citizens. Because we unfortunately, majority of Russians think that NATO is aggressive organization. It's not defensive organization. It's aggressive organization.
Gabriel.
Why? Because it was
Ambassador. Nikolai, 1 minute. I want to get Ambassador Syed Hussein Mousavian. This is a practical situation. The Russians say the situation has to go back to 2014. Otherwise, this war cannot end. I've heard this repeatedly from many Russian panelists. Is this practical, Ambassador Mousavian?
First of all, we need to be realistic. It is clear that President Putin made a mistake to attack Ukraine. It is against international law and regulation, because attacking a country, you need a resolution of United Nations Security Council, Chapter 7, Article 42. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is not a UN resolution. It is, I believe this is illegitimate. However, Russia had a legitimate concern, because already the NATO promised Russia not to extend to the border of Russia. It was for years and years and years, Russians, they were negotiating. And they just wanted a guarantee that the NATO would stop its border. Because Russia had a legitimate concern, but the method of choosing a war was not legitimate way. Now, we need to come back. Democracy is, I believe, to be frank, democracy is neither important for the US nor Europe nor China. If a dictator is in the interest of the US, like Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, Shah of Iran, or Mubarak in Egypt, the US would support. If the war is in the interest of the US war on Iraq, US war on Afghanistan, US engagement in attacking Libya or Yemen, they would support. Therefore, the issue really is not democracy. Issue for the US, for NATO, for all superpowers is the national interest. Whether a leader is Democrat or not, they don't care. They talk about democracy. But democracy really in practice doesn't mean anything. Because we can see Yemen, the most disastrous.
I agree with you. I don't think this is about democracy. I completely agree with you, Ambassador Mousavian. No, this is not about democracy. I want to take it up from there. It's not about democracy. I think my point is, Ambassador, my concern is, I'm sorry to interrupt there. My concern is really this, that I think the Americans love war. My point is very simple, Gabriel. The fact is, Americans love wars. They just love endless wars. That's why Obama, Gabriel, you're talking about wars. I don't think any American president would want to stop a war. No. 1 minute. See, Gabriel, I want to take you up on this. Gabriel, my question is to you. Obama said he's a peace-loving person. He led raids through 8 years. He said all wars must end. He led military raids in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and Pakistan. He was the most bloodthirsty American president who's been treated domestically as some kind of a liberal teddy bear. The fact is, the most bloodthirsty American president was Barack Obama. Am I right or wrong, Gabriel? Americans love war. Obama justified Afghanistan. There's no difference between Obama and Donald Trump. Donald Trump said he would win the war in Afghanistan. It was like George Bush's war on terror. Am I wrong? Gabriel, prove me wrong factually. My factual assertion is Americans love war.
First, look, I don't love President Obama. I didn't support him, but he was responding to attacks by radical Islamic terrorists on the United States from September 11th under legal authorization. He had full authorization to be in Afghanistan. And look, Americans do not love war. Americans want to get out of the Middle East. Americans want to not start any fights abroad. And under President Trump and President Obama, we were trying to get out of wars in the Middle East. When you talk about Americans loving war, President Biden just withdrew from Afghanistan. If you're talking about how our military companies are supposed to be running everything, military companies weren't happy that we withdrew from Afghanistan, and yet it happened anyways. President Biden cut our defense budget by 5% in real terms last year. That's not what happens when the military is running government and doing everything. So your contention earlier that this whole war in Ukraine is about propping up military companies, that's absurd. It has no basis in reality of what is happening in Washington. It's just a talking point. It's not true at all.
Gabriel, my concern is there must be, Gabriel, my view is, and I'll wrap with this because of want of time, I just believe there needs to be a multilateral effort to end the war. Viewers, it must be made clear, Americans, if you're watching this program, your governments love war. Put pressure on your government as well to end the war. Let's support a multilateral effort to end the war. Expecting America and NATO to end the war is as foolish as expecting Putin to end the war. Ladies and gentlemen, on the other side tonight, we're expecting a serious regime change in Pakistan. All the signs are very clear. It's not looking good for Imran Khan. I personally think he's being extremely foolish with his statements when he doesn't have the political support backing him. On the other side.